Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Show Home Live. In this interview session, I'm joined by Mark Luskin, who is the Chief Product Officer at Wonderwall. Hello, Mark. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Would you be able to give us a brief introduction to yourself from a professional angle and also explain what brings you here today speaking about this topic at Show Home Live?
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, Chief Product Officer at Wonderwall. We're a home automation energy management company, and I'm responsible for all things technical within the company, so development and pre-post sales technical. My background, though, is in computer science, which I studied many years ago. So I've spent the last 30 years or so in IT and consumer electronics. And when I started out, one of my first jobs was actually putting electronics into cars. I'm maybe showing my age here a little bit, but at that time, cars had wind-up windows. They didn't have anti-lock brakes. They didn't have navigation systems. You listened to music on the radio, and that was about it. There's no fuel injection, and they ran on leaded petrol. Today, through the use of that technology, our cars are safer, more secure, more comfortable, more efficient. We're on the cusp of I suppose you could call it a transportation revolution with widespread availability of EVs and self-driving cars. If I look at our homes, by comparison, they've barely evolved over the last 100 years, certainly from a technological point of view. So my passion, what gets me really excited, is taking technology to bring our homes into the 21st century and make them safer, more comfortable, I suppose most importantly these days, more efficient, more energy efficient, and climate friendly.
You mentioned there that cars have developed a lot over the years, but homes not so much. What do you think might be the primary reasons for this?
That's a really good question. Actually, don't get asked it very much, but yeah, it's good. If I think about it, I think cars are sold as a product. So car manufacturers differentiate themselves by the features that they have in those homes. So they'll talk quite extensively about the energy efficiency of the car in great detail. All of that additional functionality will either be built in as standard or offered as an option. But all of those features and functionality and what the technology can do for them is used as a differentiator for the car manufacturer, and that's how they promote and market the cars. On the other hand, houses tend to be really just about location and finish, and the way we sell them has not really evolved. So we don't think of our homes as a product with a set of features that make it better to live in. We just think of it as a box which is located somewhere that we go and buy. And I think it's that lack of looking at them as a product with all the feature set in them that's limited the value that house builders maybe see in adding the technology.
And thinking a bit more then about the energy efficiency aspect of homes, what would you say is the sort of current landscape or the current status of energy efficiency in our homes today?
Yeah, this is one area where house builders have actually started to look at technology and think about how that can help them to differentiate, but sadly not particularly widespread yet at the moment. So if you look at the energy efficiency of our homes, government figures tell us that only 4% of new build homes are built to EPC-A standards. That's the highest level of energy efficiency that can be achieved. However, of that 4%, only a subset of them are zero carbon standards, so zero carbon emissions. And an even smaller percentage will be net zero energy, so generating as much as they consume. Given that the UK has got a legally binding commitment to be net zero by 2050, that clearly means there's a lot of work to do. And as it stands at the moment, nearly all of the homes that we're building today will require some form of upgrade or retrofit to get them to net zero. So I suppose to address this, the UK is introducing the Future Home Standard to try and address that that issue to try and make the homes, get them closer to net zero and move us to that point.
So would you say that the future home standard is a solution and a way of helping more house builders to create net zero homes?
Um, it's certainly a step forward. So it does improve or reduce the carbon emissions of our homes. But the simple fact is a future home standard home is not net zero today. It's net zero ready. Um, what's meant by net zero ready is that the homes will use some form of electric heating. So as the grid decarbonizes, that means those homes will become net zero. But as it stands today, about half our electricity is still generated from gas and even a little bit of coal. So this means that these homes are still not zero carbon. Um, but as I said, as the grid decarbonizes, we switch to renewable generation. Our homes should, in theory, become net zero carbon at least, anyway.
I imagine that it's far from an easy task for house builders to create homes that are net zero ready, as you say. What would you say are some of the sort of standout challenges for them?
Um, yeah, so the two key ones as I see it, and these are recognized by the Future Home Standard consultation, which just closed recently. Um, but the basic issues they're facing is, on one side, building future home standard homes, they're more expensive to build. So they're better insulated. They'll have a heat pump instead of a gas boiler. And that just drives up the cost of that home. And that makes that home more expensive to sell, less accessible to first-time buyers, and the less well off. The other problem they're facing is these homes will be potentially more expensive to run. The problem you've got is electricity costs 3 to 4 times more than gas. So as we switch to electric heating and hot water, the best we can come up with is probably about the same running costs as a home with gas heating. And potentially we're going to end up with a home which has got higher running costs. And the future home standard does recognize this issue. So it's trying to balance between more expensive to build on one side, but with lower running costs, and on the other side, less expensive to build, but lower running costs. But there's a decision to be made between the two, and that really, I see it as one of the key challenges for house builders.
Do you think that homeowners are becoming more and more willing to pay the higher initial costs for a home with the long-term benefit of lower running costs?
There's some indications that homeowners are willing to pay a bit more, but I'll go back to the original number. So today, only 4 to 5% or 4% of our new build homes are built to an EPCA standard. I believe that if house builders thought that they could recover the cost of building those more expensive homes by selling them for a higher price, then those homes would be more widespread. Everyone would build to an EPCA standard. So I think that there is a small subset of the population that's willing to pay more for a better specified home, but the majority of the population is not willing to pay more for those homes, or they just don't see enough of the benefit of it. And I think that's also reflected in the wider market data around sustainability and climate change. So everybody, if you ask the majority of the population, is climate change important? Should we be doing something about it? The answer is yes. But if you ask them, are you willing to pay for it? Then they become less inclined to want to pay for that climate change. And I suppose one simple example would be the discussion around the expansion of the ultra low emission zone in London. And people generally see it as a good thing, but they don't like the fact that there's a cost associated with it. And I think the same thing applies to houses. People think it's a good thing to have a decarbonized home, but you've got to think about your what it's going to cost, especially in a climate where We've got a bit of a financial crisis. People are already cost of living crisis. That's the word I was looking for. Cost of living crisis at the moment. People are already hard strapped for money. So how can you ask them to pay more? I think that's the challenge, really.
Yeah. So just sort of summarizing this section, would you say that the future home standard homes are better than current homes, but obviously the downside is the higher costs?
Um, that's part of it. So yes, it's a step forwards, but we've got these issues of the higher costs, either running costs or bill costs. But there's a couple of other problems that I see as well. So um, as we decarbonize the heating in our homes, um, what we're doing is putting more load onto the grid. So these future homes will add electric heating and hot water. They'll add charging their EVs at home to them. So in effect, we're tripling the amount of electricity those homes need to draw from the grid. That energy has to be generated somewhere. So it will mean we have to build more power plants, and specifically more renewable power plants, so such as wind farms, solar farms, nuclear power stations. And obviously, there's a cost associated with that. Just looking at nuclear power stations, we're talking 20 to 30 billion, and they're already having an impact on our energy bills. And if you look at wind farms and solar farms, again, there's a cost associated with it, and that will translate into an increase in bills. The second part of it, though, is you need to get that energy from where it's generated to where it's being consumed. So if you consider most of our wind generation is in Scotland, and most of our house building is in the south of the country, you've somehow got to get energy from Scotland down to, I don't know, let's say London or even Birmingham, but would be a similar problem. And that means we have to build out the network infrastructure, the grid infrastructure, to be able to get all of that energy from one place to another. And again, there's a cost associated with that. And the national grid has recently asked for an additional multiple billions, I think it was 19 billion by 2035 to strengthen the network, and then an additional 50 billion from 2035 onwards to do what's needed at that time. And again, they're talking about a 20 to 30 pound impact on our energy bills to do this infrastructure. So not only have you got worries about the current build costs and the running costs, but also this transition is driving up additional costs in the electricity network, which will translate into even higher running costs moving forward.
And could you tell us a little bit more about the role that solar energy will play in helping to give homeowners lower running costs in the long term?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of solar. For me, it's a bit of a no regret install for homes. And actually, this is recognized in the Future Home Standard. So, option one is to add solar to the homes to reduce the running costs. So, that's the idea. Whereas option two is without the solar panels, therefore you've got the slightly higher running costs. There's a few other things, but let's pick on the solar for this. So, in theory, it's really good, and it will help bring down the bills. But it does a couple of things. One of them is it increases the costs, as we discussed. So I won't go into that. But I see the bigger issue is it's only part of the solution. The problem you've got is the sun shines during the day. So the solar benefit is during the day. And our homes typically are not really occupied, or they're not using most of their energy during the day. The peak load, the peak demand, or when we use most energy in our homes is in the evenings. And there typically the sun isn't shining. So what happens is you just put a solar array on its own. Only about 30% of the solar generation will be used by the home, and the remainder will be pushed back to the grid, and you don't get very much money for it. So without a battery or a home energy management system, which are not defined within the Future Home Standard, actually there's not going to be a major benefit to the homeowners. It will be only a partial benefit. And although you can do things about it, again, from what we've seen, I don't think that people are going to add these elements. So the home energy management system, the PV diversion, and certainly batteries, which are relatively expensive.
And could you tell us a little bit more about, you just mentioned there the home energy management system. What does this entail and involve?
Okay, so a home energy management system, let's use it in the context of, I would call it the ideal home. So let's say you've got a home with some form of electric heating in it and hot water. It's got solar panels on the roof and a battery in it. So the home energy management system is going to manage how that home generates, stores, and uses the energy that it's generating. So just to explain it very simply, during the summer months, the sun shines, the energy management system, basically the home runs off that energy during the day, the battery is charged up, and your hot water is heated from solar. So, in effect, through the summer months, your home is running for free. On the flip side, in winter, we've got higher energy demand because you're turning your heating on. We've got lower solar generation because the days are shorter and the weather tends to be worse. So in that case, we don't generate enough solar to run our homes. So what's happening there is the energy management system will predict the solar generation based on weather forecasts. It will estimate the energy generation based on historical patterns, how much you've used in the past, and then will automatically buy in low-cost off-peak energy to supplement the solar. So it'll charge the battery, heat the water, store heat within the home, either through storage heating or just using the fabric of the home. And effectively, that home will run for a lower cost during the winter months. And then the final piece is actually during the summer, you've got a surplus of energy. You generate more than you use. So at that point, the energy management system is trying to export at peak times. So in that evening period, to maximize the amount of money that it generates from the export. So if you take that combination of free during summer, cheap during winter, and a revenue stream from the surplus energy and solar, you end up with this net zero home. It's generating as much energy as it consumes. It's zero carbon because it exports more renewable energy than it imports from the grid. And most importantly, it's got really low running costs.
I think in an ideal world, all of our homes would run in this way. Hopefully in the future they will. What do you think can be done for us to reach this point and for more of these homes to be available to everyone?
I'd like to think in an ideal world that we would build all of our homes in this way. The issue is they cost more to build. Actually, these homes already exist. So if you look at it, you can even get to zero or negative bills in homes today if you build them in this way. But the issue is that they're just more expensive to build. So we get back to this discussion of the cost associated with building a home limits our ability to do that. Where I see an opportunity, though, so I don't want to just talk negatively about this. Let's look at the positives. On the positive side, these homes are reducing energy bills for the occupants or the owners of those homes. So if you think about negative, well, let's just use some simple numbers. £1,000 to £2,000 reduction on the energy bill is achievable today. That's pretty simple. So let's think about a model. So rather than just thinking about a technological solution, let's try and address that cost issue with a financial solution. And given that we've got those savings, those £1,000 to £2,000 of savings, What we could do is think of this model where we share the savings with the homeowner. Part of the savings are used to install the kit for free. So let's say solar inverter, battery, EV charger are installed in that home for free. And we use those savings to pay for the home energy management system, the kit, and the maintenance and monitoring of that equipment over their lifetime. So simple numbers: £1,000 savings, £600 to pay for the energy service and the kit, and 400 back to the homeowner. And in that model, you're effectively able to build a net zero home in the best case. That's the same cost to build as a gas heated home today. It's zero, or at the very least, very low carbon emissions. And the homeowner's still reducing their monthly outgoings. They're making a saving.
Well, as you mentioned before, Mark, these homes do already exist. And obviously, we do need to tackle this challenge of the higher costs. I do hope that with time, we do start to see more and more homes built in this way, and the percentage increasing from 4% to much higher very soon. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us at Show Home Live and for sharing this insight with our viewers.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been great talking. Thanks, Terry.